Hey booktube, it's Matea. Welcome back to my channel. I hope you guys are all doing great. Today we're going to be doing a video that I wanted to film for so long, ever since I started watching booktube like 7 years ago, and I finally get to make my own. So I'm super stoked. We're going to be doing the mid-year book freakout tag. So I'm going to be sharing you all of my favorites, the most disappointing, beautiful covers, all of that. So, without further ado, let's get into it. The first question is, what is your favorite book so far of the year? And I have several, but I'm going to talk about two that are at the very top that I couldn't fit into any of the other categories. So the first is Our Wives Under the Sea by Julia Armfeld. I think I've talked about this in both of the other two videos that I made so far, but it deserves it because it's great. It follows two wives, one of which goes undersea in a submarine and gets stuck there for several months. So you're following her perspective, and then you're following the perspective of the wife who is stuck on Earth during this, not knowing what is going on with her wife. And we follow her as she's dealing with her wife being away, and then also the after effects once the wife actually comes back up to the surface, and all of the repercussions that this trauma had. And the trauma is kind of manifested in a magical, kind of sensational way, and I'm not going to say much because I think it's better if you go in not knowing too much about that aspect, but this book was so beautifully written. I definitely want to read more Julia Armfeld now. I could see it play out perfectly like a movie in my head. And just the lyrical prose, I felt for the characters so much. The audiobook was phenomenal. So I would definitely highly recommend this book. And the other one that I'm going to talk about for this category is King of Scars by Leigh Bardugo. I've been a huge Six of Crows fan for a very long time, since like 2016, but I had not really that much interest in reading Shadow and Bone, but I binged both seasons of the TV show in March when the second season came out, and I'm so glad I did because I became so obsessed with this show. So then my friends were like, Matea, you have to read King of Scars because I think that you'll love Nikolai. And they were so right. I love Nikolai so much. He is my baby boy. And I really liked reading this after watching the show because I could picture all of the castings in my head, which casting for that show, phenomenal. And it's been so great being back in the Grishaverse. I'm so glad that my friends bullied me into reading this because I did super enjoy it. Like, I'm a sucker for anything to do with royalty, so I love that aspect. I love the being back in the world because it's so amazing, and I've grown to really care about Nikolai and Zoya and the Nina's perspective as well. There's a lot of really sad moments too in this book pertaining to some of the ending of Crooked Kingdom, but you can tell like I tabbed so much because there were so many great scenes, and Leigh Bardugo can do no wrong in my opinion. Like, her fantasy world, incredible. I still really have no desire to read Shadow and Bone series trilogy, but I'm super glad I read this. And it's making me feel like how I was like in 2017, discovering all these new YA fantasies, so that's been really cool. The next question is, what has been your favorite sequel so far in 2023? And I haven't read too many, but thankfully the two that I have read have been really good. So the first one I'm going to talk about is The Atlas Paradox, which is the sequel to The Atlas 6. I read both of these books in January and loved them. I'm so excited for the third book. Atlas 6 follows 6 teenagers who are entered into this competition, and they all have magic powers, but the premise of it is that one of them has to die. So it's super tense. I grew to care about all of the characters, and the magic system was super cool, and they kind of grow to care about each other even though they're kind of on a deadly mission. and it was super interesting. The tension between the characters, oh my god. I said, like, in my review, like, hot murder bisexuals doing magic, what more could you want? And that is very true. I ate it up. Incredible YA fantasy series, and all of the characters are so hot. So I'm just gonna say that. If that's my pitch. I borrowed Atlas 6 from one of my friends, and they had pictures of all the characters in it. Oh my god. But yeah, I'm definitely want to read more from Olivia Blake now. But Atlas Paradox is a fantastic sequel, fantastic series so far. The stakes kept getting higher, so I really enjoyed that series. And then the second one is Chain of Thorns, the third book in the Last Hour series by Cassandra Clare. I've been a Shadowhunter stan since like 2016. I've read all of her books, and this one was kind of sad seeing the series come to a close because I really care about the Last Hour's kid characters so much. I will say, like, I don't think this was her strongest series. I think for me, Infernal Devices and Dark Artifices were stronger for me personally, but I think this had the best cast of characters. It follows the children of the characters in the Infernal Devices, so you can't really say much about it without spoiling the events of the Infernal Devices. But I do think in terms of like Cassandra Clare finales, it wasn't the strongest, but I still really enjoyed it just because I'm so attached to the world and the characters, and there's only one more series left in the Shadowhunter world, and it kind of makes me sad, but I've been waiting for a very long time, since like 2018. So Cassandra Clare, please, please, I need my kit book now. Come on. But yeah, another YA fantasy. There's a kind of a theme. I've been reading more and more adult fantasy, but YA fantasies have been hitting this year, so what can I say? The next question is new release you need to read, and I have two answers for this. The first is Happy Place by Emily Henry, which I am currently reading. I just started, like, I have 50 pages into it. Emily Henry has become one of my new favorite authors. I read Book Lovers last year, and then I read People We Meet on Vacation and Beach Read just like a few months ago, and loved both of them so much. So I am super hyped for Happy Place, and it's also the fake dating trope, which is one of my personal favorite tropes. So I am so excited. So far I've loved Emily Henry's romances. They're so swoony. The main characters are always so relatable, and she somehow gets me to care about straight romance, which I don't do very often, but something about hers just hit for me. And this one is following two friends who were engaged, but they break up, but they are pretending to still be together for this trip with their friends to a lake house to kind of preserve the fun of the trip because it's their last one at this house. So it's like a second chance romance, fake dating, and I'm so excited. So far I'm enjoying it a lot. So that's the first one that I need to read. And then the second new release came out end of April, and it's by TJ Klune, In the Lives of Puppets, which I don't know too much. All I know it's steampunk Pinocchio, which is a little bit out of left field for something that I'd be super excited for, but I loved House in the Cerulean Sea and Under the Whispering Door by TJ Klune. So I am very excited for this because I love his writing, and I know that it's going to be beautiful. It's going to tug at my heartstrings. I'm pretty sure there's found family in this one, and TJ Klune does found family so wonderfully. Like, House in the Cerulean Sea is the found family book, so I definitely need to get to this one. I'm probably going to save it more to fall time because I think it kind of gives more of those vibes, but I will get to it by the end of the year. The next question is, what are your most anticipated releases for the rest of 2023? And I have 3 answers for this. I have a whole list, but I'm just going to talk about 3. The first is Chalice of the Gods by Rick Riordan. We're going to get to this later on in the video, but I am a huge Rick Riordan fan. I have been reading the Percy Jackson books for like 7 years, so I am super stoked to have another Percy book because he is such a special character to me, and I just know this is going to be good. Like, nothing Rick Riordan has written has ever not been good, so I am very excited for that, and that's coming in September. The second one is Bone Dust and Bookshops, or Bookshops and Bone Dust, by Travis Baldree, which is coming in November. I read Legends and Lattes last year and really adored it. Super cozy, cute, low stakes fantasy about an orc forming or starting a coffee shop in like a fantasy world, so none of the characters like even know what coffee is, and it was super adorable. And so I'm hoping that the second book has the same cozy vibes, which I'm sure it will. Read it in the winter at a cafe. It's going to be super cute, so I'm very excited for that. And then the third one is Defiant by Brandon Sanderson, which is also coming in November, which is the fourth book to the Skyward series. This is the second book, so I don't have the first one, but I have loved the Skyward series by Brandon Sanderson. It's a sci-fi series. The main character goes to a space academy, and there's these like aliens from another planet that keep attacking them, so they're training to go to war with them, but then more and more stuff is revealed and the world just expands with every book. And I love the main character. The world is so cool, and Brandon Sanderson can write fight scenes so good. And like each year, each of the books has been on my top books of the year, so I'm sure Defiant is going to be the same. So I am super excited for the fourth book in this series and how he's going to expand it even more, because honestly, like, it's been crazy how big the world has gotten, but I love the series, so I'm super excited for the fourth book. The next category is most disappointing book of the year so far, and unfortunately I do have two answers for this. The first is Severed Thread by Leslie Vedder, which is the second book in the Bone Spindle series. I really liked the first book. It's a sapphic Sleeping Beauty retelling, and I really like the world and I like Leslie Vedder's writing style, but I was expecting these two characters to get together, and they didn't in the second book. They got with these other two characters, and so that kind of ruined it for me because that's not what I was expecting. So I think for me it wasn't necessarily a bad book, it was just not really what I wanted, which was kind of disappointing for me. But I think if it would have been closer to a Sleeping Beauty retelling and it would have just followed the two characters that it follows in the first book, I would have liked it a lot better, but what can you do? And then the second was We Are Never Ever Getting Back Together by Sophie Gonzalez. I was so excited for this one because it's sapphic. It's set on like a dating show, which I thought was super interesting. It has Taylor references. I've read another book by Sophie Gonzalez and really liked it, so I had super high hopes. But unfortunately, it did not hit for me. The book was more focused on them getting back at their shared ex on this dating show rather than the progression of their relationship. So I think the relationship felt super rushed. It felt kind of insta-love. There was really nothing for me to be rooting for them. Nothing that I was like, no reason why I thought they should get together. And honestly, it kind of relied a lot on miscommunication. And so the romance was just not very good, in my opinion, and the pacing was super weird because it was so slow. Like nothing happened for the first like 60% of the book, and then so much happened in the last like 20% of the book in terms of their relationship. And so unfortunately it just did not work for me. So that was a huge letdown. But if you like game show tropes, the two main characters have the same ex, and then they go on this dating show where he's dating like 6 of his exes to see if any of them are still a match for him, but he's kind of an asshole. So these two girls make a pact they're going to like expose him on national TV, but then they fall in love in the process. So if that sounds interesting to you, you might still be interested in picking it up, but for me, it just did not work, unfortunately. I'm gonna combine the next 2 questions because they kind of tie together for me, but they are biggest surprise and also new favorite author. So in January, I read Hamnet by Maggie O'Farrell. This follows the family of Shakespeare. He's not ever called that, so it could be really any family during that time period in that area, but it's about Shakespeare and his wife and his children primarily. And I didn't really enjoy it. I liked the historical element. I thought Maggie wrote the family dynamics super well. It was very sad, but it wasn't like amazing. But then I read Marriage Portrait in March, which I thought I was gonna like, but I didn't expect it to be 5 stars like it was for me. I adore the Marriage Portrait. It's kind of a theory on this painting from the 1400s Italy of this woman, and historical records kind of indicate that maybe her husband killed her right after the painting was done. She's a duchess, she's the daughter of a duke, and she's married off to this, I think, prince or duke somewhere else. And so the book is from her perspective, and it's super tense because the first chapter is kind of setting up like my husband's going to kill me, and it was so tense. I loved the main character's POV, the writing style, incredible, which is why like O'Farrell's become one of my new favorite authors. And I really loved the setting too. Kept me on my toes the whole time. There were so many amazing lines. So Maggie O'Farrell really surprised me this year, but she's a new like auto read author. I'm going to read her autobiography probably at some point this year. So yeah, I can't say enough good things about The Marriage Portrait and Maggie O'Farrell. Next question is your new favorite character, and I have one that immediately came to mind, which is Viola from Lady for a Duke. This is a Regency romance following Viola, who is a trans woman in, I think it's Victorian England, and her and her best friend, her childhood best friend Justin, they were in war together, and he thought that she died, but really she just started living as Viola, as the woman that she is. So then they reconnect and get to know each other again, and it's so cute. It was such a cute romance, and the Regency vibes were amazing, and Viola is just such a sweet character, and I only want happiness for her, and this was just such a cozy, happy, fun read. Can you guys hear that? Mr. started pouring rain outside. That is crazy. But anyways, I really loved her voice, and there was a lot of aspects that I related to as a gender non-conforming person. I'm not trans, but the way that Viola was talking about gender was so interesting to me, so I just adore her. And if there were other books in the series, I would be so happy, but unfortunately there's not. But I would definitely recommend that book, and Viola is so wonderful. The The next question is newest fictional crush, and I definitely had one. It is Miles from See You Yesterday by Rachel Lynn Solomon. Rachel Lynn Solomon has become a new also comfort straight romance author, mostly because her male love interests are so sweet, and Miles is no exception. See You Yesterday is about two college students who are stuck in a time loop on their first day of college. And so they become close trying to figure out why it's happening and get out of it. And it's set at UW, University of Washington in Seattle, which is the school that I go to. So that was super cool. And now I'm it's kind of become bad because any man I see that's like sort of similar to Miles, I'm like, is this Miles Kusher? But yeah, it was such a cute romance, and Miles, he's so sweet. He's kind of shy. He's really nerdy. He's, I think like a physics major, but he also was a major in film because he secretly loves Regency era romance movies, which is like so cute. And he like adores the female main character so much, and I love that trope, like boy obsessed. He was just so adorable, and I need him, and the fact that he isn't real but he felt so real, kind of criminal, but I love him to death, and I really loved this romance. So yeah. Next question is book that made you cry, which I didn't have any that made me like actual cry real tears because that's very rare for me, but I did have a book that made me come very close and made me very sad, which is Tomorrow Will Be Different by Sarah McBride. Sarah was the first openly transgender person in a state senate. She serves on the Delaware State Senate, and so the book is a memoir about how she got into politics, how she got that position, her experience going to school in DC and working in the White House. But the part that made it sad was her relationship with her husband, Andy, who unfortunately got cancer and passed away just like days after they got married. And seeing them deal with that and seeing the grief of losing the love of her life was super sad and emotional, and I felt for her so much. But it was such a beautiful story. The way that she talked about him and how she honors her memory was so sweet. So yeah, that was probably what the book that made me the most sad out of anything I've read this year. And it caught me off guard too, because I was just like, oh, political memoir, that's so about it from a trans woman, that's so interesting. And then that happened, and I kind of it was a jump scare, but it was a really great read nonetheless. The next book is on the other end, and it's books that made you happy. So I have two answers for this. The first is the Check Please graphic novels, which follows Biddy, who is a college hockey player, but he also loves to bake. And it was just so cute. Like, it was pure fluff. It's just him, like, getting to know his team, so there's a found family vibe, and then he has a romance with one of the other players, and he is just such a sweet character, and it was just very wholesome. And I read it right after another hockey romance, and that set into motion of me becoming obsessed with hockey, and now I'm writing my own hockey romance. So you can definitely say it had an impact on me, because I love hockey romances, specifically gay hockey romances, so much now. So that definitely made me very happy, and I just flew through both volumes of the graphic novel. And then the other one is Fiancé Farce by Alexandria Bellefleur. I've also talked about her, I think, in both of my other videos, but she's become a new auto-bi romance author. She has the Written in the Stars series, and then this is her newest one, which is a marriage of convenience trope. The characters agree to a fake marriage because Gemma needs to be married to inherit her family's newspaper like conglomerate, and Tansy has been lying to her family that she's been dating Gemma for years. So they have this fake marriage arrangement, but then they fall in love, and it was super sweet, super hot. Alexandra Bellefleur, her books are so steamy, but they're so good. It was so hot. And that's like I said before, fake dating is one of my favorite tropes, and I love Alexandra Bellefleur's writing style. And this is also set in Seattle. So and I loved the characters so much, and it was just very cute. It also had found family, which is another one of my favorite tropes, because Gemma's roommates are amazing, and you can tell I tabbed this so much too. So, and another book that made me extremely happy this year. The next question is the most beautiful book you bought this year, which has to go to The Sun and the Star by Rick Riordan and Mark Oshiro. As you can tell, it is a signed copy, which I was not expecting. I went to like a local indie bookstore in Seattle just hoping to get a copy of it, and then I saw they had it signed, and that was the best day ever. This is now my prized possession, my child, my baby. I can't believe that I have a signed copy of this. And this was one of my most anticipated books of the year, and I adored it so much because Nico means so much to me. He was one, if not the first, like gay character that I read about. And so having him have his own story, it was so sad, but it was also so hopeful, and it felt like the right ending for his story, and to see him come into his own and deal with all of the trauma that he's had to go through in the other Percy Jackson books was just so special. And it really did feel like my childhood kind of coming to an end. I healed with Nico, and so this book will always be special to me. It's just so gorgeous, and the fact that it's signed and the insides are so beautiful too is just, this is my baby now, my child. And the dedication is to every Will, Nico, and Piper out there. His three queer characters keep shining as bright as the sun, which makes me sob every time because Rick's books were such a crucial part to my own queer journey. So this will always be so special to me. The final question is, what are the books you have to finish by the end of this year? And I have a huge list, but I'm just going to talk about like the most prominent, the top of my TBR. So the first would be the Gilded Wolves trilogy by Roshani Chokshi. I read the first book in 2019, which I didn't realize it was that long ago till I just saw on my Goodreads, but I'm rereading the first one and then hopefully continuing on with the next two books, so I'm very excited about that. I also need to continue with the Live Ship series by Robin Hobb. I read Ship of Magic earlier this year, really enjoyed it, so I'm hoping to get to Mad Ship very, very soon. And then same with the Lockland series by Robert Jackson Bennett, I believe. I read the first book in May, really enjoyed it, so I'm hoping to finish that series before too much time passes and I forget everything. And then Tress of the Emerald Sea by Brandon Sanderson. Sanderson's one of my favorite authors, and this book sounds incredible. It's like a Princess Bride inspired fantasy, which is amazing, and so I need to get to this one. And then Better Than the Movies by Lynn Painter. I have had so many friends and also booktubers and book talkers rave about this book, and I am so much in my romance girly era that I am very excited, and I really hope this lives up to the hype. And then Half a Soul by Olivia Atwater. This is so many of my favorite booktubers' favorite book of last year, and so I really need to get to it this year, and I think I'm going to really enjoy it. And then Imogen, obviously, by Becky Albertalli. Simon vs. Homo Sapiens Agenda is one of my favorite books of all time, and I love Becky Albertalli's books so far, and this one sounds like it's going to be very relatable, so I am super excited to get to this one, hopefully, by the end of this year. And that concludes all the questions on the mid-year freakout tag. I had super fun time filming this, and I hope you liked getting just a little snippet of my reading year so far. I've read 70 plus books, so these are just a fraction of them, but they're the cream of the crop. So I hope that you got some recommendations. Feel free to leave your favorite book of the year down below so I can check it out. Other than that, have an amazing day. Take care of yourselves. I love you. Bye!